Hi, everyone. Welcome to the B2B Game Changers podcast. I've got a real treat for you today. One of the things that I'm talking about a lot at the moment and talking to clients about is, marketing and the future of sales and marketing. And as an industry, we're going through a tremendous amount of change. So what I thought would be interesting is to bring on what I would class as real game changers, individuals I know and have worked with personally, but also make it quite interesting to talk about it from a global level. So, we've got, Julija here, Senior VP of Marketing at Softchoice, was in a reseller industry. We got Fraser, CMO at Grant Thornton, professional services industry, and Richard Parker, Senior VP of Marketing, also in EMEA. So what we've got here is kind of three industries, three regions globally, all going through different levels of change. And I thought it'd be interesting to kind of bring it all together, smash it all together, kind of with some interesting topics, see how they're handling the current crisis, hopefully something that we're all getting ahead of, but really explore some of the specific changes in marketing that's going on now. So first of all, guys, look, really appreciate you joining me. At the times, this was very difficult to do with time zones. We've got Fraser in Sydney, Richard in London, Julija in Toronto. So guys, look, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
So look, as per my style, I kind of want to, I think to go forward, you have to go a little bit backwards. And certainly when I was talking to you all at the beginning of this year about 2020, I don't think COVID was in the kind of priority list for any of us. And so I thought an interesting topic to start with was when COVID happens, and I think, Julija, you and I was actually with you quite early on in the crisis. I think I left Toronto to come back to London. I think it was about a week before lockdown. But what were the kind of challenges that your teams faced going into lockdown? From a marketing perspective, because each of your business would operate differently. But what were the kind of challenges that you faced?
Yeah, you're right. You just reminded me. I forgot that you were there just a week before. It was in March, and we were discussing what was happening in the UK. I think the first one, the problem for us was, or the challenge was, how do we even keep everybody connected? I have a large marketing team, and at first it's like, how are we going to be working remotely? I think as everybody else, right? But luckily, we were able to figure it out pretty quickly because we are in technology sector, and that's what we do for our clients. And I'd say that the most important and the biggest challenge for us was really pivoting everything, pivoting our entire marketing, our entire strategy in a matter of 2-3 weeks, and just getting into the completely different way of marketing, completely different way of reaching out to our customers and enabling sales. So that was the biggest challenge for us.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, I don't think when we were having dinner in Toronto, I definitely don't think it was going to turn out like it did. But there you go. But Richard, yourself, what were your challenges, and what were the challenges that you faced? Because obviously you got a team right across EMEA, yeah?
Yeah, no, I've got a team across EMEA and APAC. So it was a challenge firstfold for the team to adapt to working remotely. The London team is very close, and it's a very interactive team. So we're normally very hands-on on a day-to-day basis, and also with our sales partners as well. So that was kind of a big change that we had to make. But then I think secondly, it was really almost turning off the marketing programs that we had in market, because it was a crisis like no other, because it was a humanitarian crisis. It was inappropriate to be doing some of the marketing activity that we were doing, and we almost had to switch to become a communications team overnight to inform our clients and prospects of what we were thinking about the markets how things were going to pan out, the impact on their investments as a kind of a first order priority. So it was going back to basics of making sure that we're hand-holding the client base and continuing to build that trust. So it was a complete 180 for the team, and that was almost overnight to do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's an interesting topic I want to kind of explore more on in terms of how the kind of themes and content and tactics, either went dark or changed. But Fraser, thanks for joining us from Sydney. So what was your outlook there?
I look probably much the same to Richard's, to be honest. I mean, it was a day that I'll never forget because it happened to fall on the day of my 10-year anniversary of my wife. And we were down in Tasmania for celebrations, and all of a sudden, boom, I was on the phone for 14 hours trying to work out what we were going to do. And we as a company moved really quickly to get our people safe first. And make a decision in closing offices, and then very similar to Richard, it was away from doing what we were doing in terms of trying to win new business. It was more about, okay, client experience, client first. How do we help our clients navigate the complexities of the information that's coming in right now, and taking away probably some of the stresses and strains that they were feeling, and how do they cut through and get to the information that matters most. And honestly, for the first 6, 7, 8 weeks, that's all we were doing. We were taking government announcements and simplify them for the benefit of our clients.
Absolutely. One of the things that I'm interested in was, Julia, I know you've got a very big team, and I think the majority of those are located on one site or certainly one campus in Toronto. Richard, I know your team's spread, and Fraser, I know your team's predominantly in Australia. What was the kind of what were operations like? Because that shift from particularly creative teams, operating in a particular way, all being in the same room, a process of putting kind of campaigns or content together. Was that more difficult, or was it kind of easier because of everyone kind of had to do it? Everyone knew we had to get this right. We need to, deliver the content. It needs to be good. What was the operations like, and the challenges that come with that?
So I think, Lee, from my perspective, for the actual team, it was actually relatively straightforward because I've got a relatively thin team that's kind of spread globally. So we're used to having a lot of contact on the phone, less so video conference, but certainly on the phone. So that was easier. I think the biggest impact was having our business partners working remotely as well. So we're very much used to working with local stakeholders and understanding intrinsically what they want from us. But all of a sudden they disappeared. And so changing that relationship and making sure that the team stayed connected to those stakeholders and other business leaders, both in sales and in our business and investments, was key. And that was difficult as well, because they were being crushed by the client side in terms of incoming inquiries, whereas we're kind of almost hassling them from our side, saying, what do you want? What do you need? What do you need? And it's so for them to find the time to then interact with us, to give us enough intelligence to then go away and do something in the early couple of weeks was challenging. But then I think over time, it sounds like a little bit like Fraser, we got a process in place where we effectively had kind of a weekly webinar for our whole client base and a weekly communication cycle that kind of overcame that to a certain extent.
Absolutely. Lee, I think, I mean, I wouldn't say I was astounded. I kind of knew that our team would react the way they reacted, and the way they reacted was it was all hands on deck. There was no panic. It was, it's as if a crisis infused them, quite frankly. Which I think, quite frankly, marketing teams, BD teams around the world, perform better in times of pressure and crisis, and absolutely no doubt for the majority of us will never work through a crisis like this again. However, what really got me from a professional services point of view was how quickly our partners and, if you like, the client-facing side of the business reacted to work in tandem with us. You know, normally that can be a struggle. Normally we are pushing as a marketing team to make things happen. But all through this period, just how together we as a marketing team, BD team, and our partners have worked seamlessly for the benefit of our clients. It's actually been really inspiring. You know, the trick is for us now is how do we maintain that momentum as we trickle into what will become, dare I say it, that horrible phrase, the new normal. That the momentum is the piece for leaders, I reckon, is the challenge going forward.
Yeah, no, definitely. And do you think that attitude, you know, that kind of togetherness, because I definitely resonates with me. Do you think that can be maintained? Because, you know, from a human aspect, what I noticed even in our own business and, you know, talking to you guys and, you know, other customers and, you know, there's lots to be learned here, but that togetherness, and everyone kind of dropped the ego, right? Everyone, you know, dropped let's you keep on topic in terms of the sales and marketing kind of things that go on. Do you think once we do get back to a new normal and all the kind of pressures of life and, you know, recessions and all of these kind of kick in, do you think those things will come back, or do you think there's a possibility we can maintain some of that goodness that we got?
Personally, sorry, Julia, you go. I'll go next.
Well, I was going to say, sorry, Fraser. I was going to say that I certainly hope that we maintain that. I think we had a very similar experience to Fraser's, whereas the sales and marketing really got very quickly much better aligned, quicker coming together. And I think it was all about what are we doing for the customers? You know, it wasn't about selling, it was about helping, right? And what do we have in our kit bag? And luckily, we're in the area of technology where this was very necessary to help people set up remote work. And there was a lot of opportunity to help, right? And so then there wasn't what is sales and doing, what is marketing doing. It was what are we doing together. So I certainly hope that that is going to stay. At least it helped break some barriers between sales and marketing. And I think going into the future, I hope the future is coming soon without the crisis and the and the COVID-19, but I think that's going to only help unite sales and marketing.
Fraser, go ahead.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think probably the question I would ask in reverse, Lee, would be if for some reason we see it going back the way, why is that happening, quite frankly? From where we've got to, you know, our clients are now demanding a different kind of approach. You know, I'm getting asked on a daily basis, you know, I need to pick up the phone to a client or a prospect. You know, how do I do that in the new virtual environment? What do I talk to them about? And you know, this is where the power of marketing and having those insights and the data become really to the fore, because, you know, in a virtual environment, you know, people have less time. They don't have time for a coffee catch up or just a chat. They want to engage with you on something that's genuinely meaningful. And what we're talking about here is true client experience. Something that I think companies in the past have pandered to. It's been a phrase. It's been something they feel they've had to do to tick a box. Now we're talking in real life now about what true client experience means. And true client experience means that you'll engage with clients and with prospects on things that interest them at the right time. And to do that, you need the technology, you need the insights and the data to tell you when that is the right time and what are the things you should be speaking about. That's client experience. And I'm really hoping that for us to get that, it's easy enough. But for the rest of the business that take a longer time to get there, and that's fair enough, well, we've got to get there quicker. for the benefit of clients, because there's companies out there that do it really well, and they'll steal a march, and unless you're there, well, you're not, quite frankly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I think Julie, you said it, and we're all kind of articulating it in different ways. I know Richard, you know, the shift was, how do we help? Now, I think you know, for me, and marketing is about helping our customers get the jobs done that they need to get done, right? So helping them be better, right? That's what marketing is, or certainly should be, and COVID kind of focused that. You know, even when the content that I absorb, whether it be from you guys or other businesses, I could see the change. I could see it being from actually just talking about us and what we're doing well and what the product is and how good it is, actually to how can we help you. And I really, really hope that sticks. I have my doubts, if I'm honest, but I really, really hope that does stick. Richard, your thoughts, or any on that particular point?
I'm totally on side with that. I think, you know, traditionally, you know, in my industry with kind of B2B financial products, it's very much been kind of a relationship sell. And like Fraser was saying, it's, you know, we'll meet for a coffee, we'll meet for a chat, we'll go to physical events and conferences and get together and have a beer and then talk about kind of what your needs are. And to a certain extent, you know, marketing, although marketing facilitates a lot of that, marketing's kind of, you know, frozen out a little bit from that discussion over what the real needs are. Now it's a different environment and it's virtual, and you've got to pick up the phone and have a conversation. It's a bit more challenging. It is, what are you going to say? What are those client concerns that you're going to connect on to complete that client experience? And they need something. They need that bit of content. They need that facilitated either via a webinar or digitally. So I think some of that has changed for the better. I'm with you in terms of whether it will last for the medium to long term. I think elements of it will, and I think it's incumbent on us over the next kind of 3-6 months to make sure that we kind of institutionalize that as much as possible, and also get the metrics in place to actually prove how successful it can be in terms of working in this way, rather than sliding back into the kind of the relationship sale and the and events being almost the most important part of the mix, which it was in my industry, and I'm kind of blessed at the moment that they're gone, in actual fact, because we can move on and focus on other parts of the mix and prove their value to sales and sell that in.
Definitely. I want to touch on it. Sorry, Julia,
Richard,
go ahead.
to what you're saying. I think my question would be, or more of a statement, I guess, is that this is a huge compelling event that united everybody, right? Because in our industry, Lee, you were saying that there is a lot of kind of like, here is what we do and here is what we can help you with. We're always looking for a compelling event. And in normal world, everybody is at different stages of their maturity, different stages of what they need, different stages of technology implementations. And so it's always hard to find that one compelling event. And I think with COVID, it's easier to find that compelling event, right? Everybody is in the same state of mind. And so that's why I think you see that a lot of the content that is coming out from us or from anybody is really focused on helping people with the immediate need, because we all know what the immediate need is. And so, I'm thinking ahead, and how do we keep that going in terms of always being in that state of thinking ahead and being relevant to the customer, right? And is that going to be harder when this one major compelling event is gone. I think it will be. But through all of our tactics, whether it's events or other tactics, we need to kind of keep that in mind. And it's up to us, as Richard is saying, right? But I think it's going to be harder.
Julia, it's really interesting because this is something we're grappling with as well in Australia. The compelling event was COVID. I'm lucky to live in a country that seems to have handled it incredibly well compared to other countries in the world. We had 104 deaths total. I mean, it's tragic, but at the same time, when you look elsewhere, especially the country I come from, which is a small country, and there's 5,000 deaths, we've got a country that's handled it really well. And what we're finding is what we were initially doing was what I would call crisis communications, how we're helping clients through a crisis. And you mentioned the word pivot before, which you're hearing more and more, which is an interesting word because it's marketing. Very quickly, we're pivoting to something else. And Australia, we're pivoting away from COVID to pivot to recession. And how are we dealing with the recession that we now find ourselves in, which is very different. It's a result of COVID, but it's a very different set of needs. It's a very different conversation. And at that point, now we're thinking about, okay, well, yeah, clients first, prospects first. What are they suffering from? What are their issues? But at the same time, how do we align our offerings with what they need? So it's not a hard sell, but it's actually providing value through conversations. And that's a pivot. And then we'll be going through this period, and then it's beyond recession, because hopefully the recession in Australia is not going to last long. So what does that mean? And then we're pivoting yet again. So, geez, it's normally I would like to think professional services marketing, we have longer periods of time to do different campaigns. We're now working on something that can change in an absolute heartbeat over the coming days and weeks and months.
Yeah, we had over the course of since March, 3 months, right? A number of different campaigns coming out because we designed this model, kind of a 4-phase model that thinks about business continuity, stability, efficiency, and then recovery. And this is what everybody, all organizations are going through, what you're talking about, right? So at first they were like, how do I just stabilize my business? How do I ensure the continuity of my operations? Then everybody started to think, okay, recession is coming. I need to save money. And how do we take cost out of business? And now everybody is talking about, well, getting back to normal, but normal is no longer the normal, right? It's the next normal that everybody needs to design and build for themselves. And it's accelerating the digital transformation that organizations have been going through. I think, we all notice how if you digitize your business, then this is where you really, you would survive, right? And many organizations aren't surviving, unfortunately. And so for all of that, we had to launch different content, different sales enablement, different campaigns, different communication. And so to your point, it's like it's literally every second week, pivoting and trying to deliver that relevancy to the market.
Do you think in terms of the way a possible strategy to adopt to cover that off, right? Because we've had COVID, we've also had the diversity issues, Black Lives Matter, and all of these quite difficult topics to handle and communicate on. And I want to touch on internal comms as well in a second, but the importance of having a narrative, and an arc to that approach in terms of content, because it kind of comes back to the priorities are this month we have to do this number, right? So let's actually just get after that particular campaign, where we could try as marketeers in terms of just lay out that journey for the customer, lay out that narrative for the customer. And it's a way of kind of trying to cope with those compelling events as we go through. So it's a consistent approach. Okay. Any thoughts on that, Julia, in particular? Because, around that customer journey?
Well, from the customer journey perspective, like I was saying, we were thinking with COVID, right? What are the most compelling and pressing needs of organizations? Literally in the moment, like what are they going to be now, and what are they going to be in the next 3 months? And it's hard from the executional perspective to be maintaining that constant relevancy, I would say, because we're operating across the US and Canada, and we have 600 salespeople across the organization, and 300 of which are actually on the phone, right? And now people buy differently. Now everybody's on the phone and on video. And so catering to the entire customer journey, I'd say it's still a challenge. And so for us, thinking around the different phases that different organizations are in, or I think now sort of like personas, it's how from the marketing perspective you think, okay, who are the personas you're selling, what are they worried about, and then the different industries, the different segments you're selling, what they're worried about. I think it's kind of all blended right now. It's there is a bit more of a mass marketing for us than very, very targeted marketing, because we kind of feel that everybody's feeling the same pain. And really lining up those phases and trying to understand and helping sales understand where their customers are, whether they're trying to find ways still to be stabilized in their operations or saving money, or they're continuing on digital path and digital transformation, and helping them really bring the right content, the right tools, the right conversations to the forefront.
Definitely. Having that joined up approach, from what marketing are talking about in terms of your commerce, but also what the sales team and what the sales narrative is, which is for me also, massively important. But Fraser, Richard, any comments on that?
Yeah, I guess Mike,
Sorry, Richard, go for your
sorry,
life.
Fraser.
No, you're okay.
Yeah, I think we've set up post kind of the crisis period. I think it's interesting that all three industries have done almost a similar thing. There was a crisis period that was all about communication and maintaining that trust, and then trying to think about what's the process you now go through to kind of almost get back on the horse and start talking about what's next. So we've had a good focus on what's next in after the market drawdown. So where should investors be looking, and some core themes. But I also think that where we've had huge interest in things where the world doesn't stop, and by that I mean when there's regulatory changes that are forcing our clients' hand in something. And so there's some regulatory change in the US around pensions, and that was hugely engaging for our clients, because although COVID happened, that piece of legislation being implemented didn't stop. So there was still a need to go out and engage clients on that. And that's happening as well in Europe now around kind of climate and climate investing and some of the regulatory change there. So it's almost as if, the crisis is still ongoing, but people are almost going back to that normal kind of day job and saying, actually, what's impacting us from a regulatory perspective, from an investments perspective, where's our return profile? And so it's that kind of slightly awkward business as usual, but obviously it's not usual by any stretch of the imagination. So I think that's one of the things we're coming to grips with. And as you get kind of deeper and deeper into the crisis, and I think we had this in finance with the global financial crisis, that the crisis itself becomes the normality, and it's ongoing. And who knows how long this is going to run for, or the recession is going to run for, kind of post-COVID.
Yeah, Lee, I think the challenge for me is, you were talking about internal comms and that balance of content that is focused on, crisis to what you offer, that can support clients, but also what companies stand for. And it, we're in a period, in my opinion, it's incredible. Quite frankly, we're seeing Black Lives Matter. We're seeing other people who feel aggrieved about certain opinions that they have come to the fore. People have very strong opinions, and companies, are in certain companies, not my industry, thankfully, but other industries are having to react to that, by changing the names of their products, for example. But we all have to be really cognizant of it, and working out when you've got thin marketing teams and thin budgets. What is it you invest in during these periods? Are you investing in bringing dollars through the door? Are you investing in making sure your brand is seen in the right way? Are you invested in making sure your people feel proud of your brand? It's a challenge, and it's going to be a bigger challenge for organizations over the next 24, 36, 5 years, 10 years time. That's just bigger, because budgets aren't going to go up. That's quite clearly. It's finding the balance, and I think for me as a marketing leader, that's something that is well in my mind at the moment about how you strike that balance, and I don't have the answer yet. Maybe won't ever.
Absolutely. We're definitely coming on to we're definitely going to come on to budgets, because that's definitely one we should talk about, and I think interested to talk it around tactics, which I think what I want to know from you guys is what's working. I'm sure it's all virtual, and what's working in your business, and the people who listen to this podcast, what can they learn from that? So, but the internal comms piece. Richard, Julia, any thoughts on that in terms of how you handled it and how you're going to handle it going forward?
Yeah, so from the internal communications perspective, it's we are in crisis mode, right? And my team also manages internal comms, and it was a completely different beast, and sort of jumping right away into continuing to maintain our culture and employee engagement in a very different way when everybody is working remotely. And it's an organization of again expanding across the US and Canada, and now we're in such unprecedented times, right? It's COVID, but also the social crisis. And so we did many different things really from the get-go around how do we encourage open and transparent communication. So, we typically run the monthly Orange Nation Live, we call them, where it's executives and other people around the organization share what's happening. And so we made those communications more frequent. So the Orange Nation Lives continue to introduce the Orange Nation Connect, ran by different teams on a weekly basis. We introduce different social events that would be happening during the day and then also at night, because one of the considerations that we had was that it's hard for people to operate at home. Like I have 2 kids at home, and it's always the struggle is that, hey, it's difficult to work during the day with all the other things happening at home. But the reality is that a lot of people live alone, and in the lockdown, right, they have nothing to do at home at night. So we introduce virtual comedy shows and virtual talent shows and virtual, wine tasting and other things to just to support the employees through this hard time. And because Softchoice for us, it's organizational culture is so important. It is important for everybody, all organizations. But for us, it's we take care of each other, and we take care of our employees first. Like those are our values. And so thinking about how we can do it more effectively was super important for us, for sure.
Definitely, and I've
I
seen
think
some of
building
those
on
things as well. So I've seen some of those things from your virtual talent shows and stuff like that. It was fantastic. But Richard,
Yeah, I didn't know. So those people had all the talents. Even on my team, we didn't. It's amazing actually what you learn.
we're going to do.
Because of the frequency of communication, how you see what people can do now. You learn so much more on the personal level.
Did I not tell you that at the end of this podcast, that's what we're going to do?
Okay, that's not it.
Richard,
But
sorry.
Yeah, no, building on that, and I don't have direct responsibility for any internal communications, but I think it really gave the opportunity for companies to just connect in a different way with their employees, because normally internal communications can tend to be a little bit dry around org announcements and business strategy and all of that stuff, which is still kind of vitally important. But I think we, using that pivot word again, we kind of pivoted from an internal comms perspective, and it was very much about the welfare of the employee and how they were getting on, and making sure that they were talking to their manager, taking time out of their day, acknowledging the challenges of having children at home, etc., etc. So it was much more of a kind of a caring internal comms message that came through, and I think it was also a great leveler to see some of our executives just wearing kind of open neck tops and just in their studies, etc., etc. With a dog in the background, that they're kind of real people, normal people. So that's all I'd say about internal comms. I think it really did break down some barriers.
Yeah. So
ironically, Richard, I've just had to turn my camera off there as a sleepy 4-year-old wandered into my room for a cuddle and wondering why I was shouting. So isn't that just an example of the new world that we're in?
It is. Yeah. But
exactly right.
Isn't it funny how that is acceptable now, right?
Yeah.
Where it just wasn't before. No matter what country, no matter what region, nationality, whatever, cultural, that kind of etiquette was just everyone was. If you were doing a call and you were home, you were kind of really cognizant of who was around, right? And that for me, that's definitely one of the things we need to keep. Right, that needs to stick, because it's just sensible, a sensible approach, but just a more relaxed approach to what is a very difficult situation.
Lee, it was only a year ago, maybe 18 months, that we were witnessing the video on BBC of the guy getting interviewed.
That's right.
And the son and the wife pulling out, and that's because he felt it wasn't appropriate. And I think that just shows you in such a short period of time that, you know what, that's just the way it is now. I'm now doing meetings every day with bubs on legs, dogs on legs.
Yeah.
It's a new world, and do you know what? It's not affecting output. In fact, I've never seen output as good, quite frankly, as what we're getting. I'm seeing as more creative. I think people are safer. I think the big one I'm hearing, because Sydney's horrific to get in and out of work because we live in a harbour. The fact that people don't have to commute to get to work is actually adding to the output that we're getting. So, for me, it's just a wonderful thing in many ways through a pretty dire situation.
Sorry, Fraser, but it brings people closer together. I think, one of the positive outcomes of this is that we are closer as a team, and just working in these conditions. Well, we always use video, so we were constantly, operating in kind of a face-to-face environment. But just with kids and family, and or having walk-in meetings or the meetings on the backyard, right? And just being more people and human, right? So it's different type of connection. I think that people learn different sides of each other, so which makes it better.
Completely agree. But look, I want to talk about tactics, and I presume, as I said earlier, I think they're going to be virtual. Although, funny story, I was with two funny stories which lead into this. But one, I was with a CRO, talking to a CRO yesterday, Chief Revenue Officer, and they're already planning to get back to face-to-face meetings as soon as possible. To get their business rolling again, is how he articulated it to me. But I want to tie the conversation around tactics around budget, because it's very, very relevant. And again, I was on a call with about 50 CEOs. I was invited on. I won't say what it was, and they did a poll. And this is about a month ago, and the poll was, your 2020 targets. I think the question was, are you going to reduce your budget's forecast for the year, right? So, what your plan was, and I think it was 100% no, right? The sales are the sales, right? We've got to hit our numbers no matter what. And then the second question was, are you going to reduce budgets? Yes. So you kind of got this situation where it's 50% of the budget, but 100% of the return. And in regards to in your own business, obviously nothing specific, but how's the business looking at budget? How are you looking at budget? How's that changing the tactics that you deploy? And my second question tied to that is kind of what are the tactics that you're finding really successful? And that could just be from engagement, like we talked about. I'm not really talking about return on investment or deals or whatever that might be. But what's kind of working? Julia, do you want to?
Yeah, I can start. And from the budget perspective, well, you're absolutely right. So the sales quotas, the sales budget is not going down for us, 100%. The marketing budget, we haven't seen a huge decrease, but yes, we're looking at some reduction or operating with smaller budgets. But of course, the expectations are the same, right? So what do we do? I mean, first of all, everybody, I think, we all operate now in the digital environment. There isn't anything face-to-face happening. And Richard, you were mentioning the reliance on face-to-face events. We are also very much of an event-driven marketing, and we ran in the past, 80 to 100 events a year across Canada and the US, and of different types, whether there were the strategy type of events or boot camps or all kinds of different events. And of course, we also did webinars as parallel tactic, and now we had to virtualize everything, right? So we introduced now rapid response series, which we were running. It was 2 webinars a week, and over the past so many weeks, of course, we had over 20 or 30 webinars, which we had over 1,000 people, or sorry, thousands of people attending actually. And then one big success that we had was with our virtual discovery series, which was sort of a conference. It's a day-long event that we put together with our partners, and it was the same type of experience that you would go into a full day conference, which with expositions, your vendor booths, your keynotes, workshops, and put together an event like that. And with we saw 2,000 people registering for it, 50% actually attending, people spending on average 2.5 hours in that conference, and so a ton of engagement, right? And I find that when it's topical, and now people are looking for answers to their most pressing problems and challenges, then we see a lot of that digital and virtual type of execution is really working. It's working for us.
Definitely. Richard?
Yeah, so I think for us, budgets have remained, I think the sales targets have remained the same. The marketing budgets, we had an initial kind of bit of a period of stress where we thought that they were going to be reduced. So we were being very cautious early on in terms of what we were spending. But in actual fact, the reduction in marketing budgets has really been quite minimal, and I think that's largely offset by the fact that we're no longer doing physical events, which tend to be a lot more expensive anyway. So there's a bit of a buffer there. In terms of the tactics, that we're using. Early on, as a communications kind of method, we were using kind of email and webinars, and webinars were kind of successful early on, and I think that was because people were absolutely hungry for information, but also locked down themselves. So you kind of had a bit more of a kind of a static audience. As we've noticed over the past few weeks, where things have been a little bit more normalized and people can leave their house and they're probably not so much focused on the crisis, then we found webinars as a tough tactic, because I think the marketplace is really oversubscribed. I mean, if you consider, there's upwards of 50 asset managers in Europe, all trying to reach the same clients. You can pick any one day, and there's quite a few webinars planned at any moment in time. So we've really changed to working with our media partners to using kind of third-party promotion. So using kind of solid emails with media partners, content placement with media partners. We're doing a lot of our own email. We still find that that's the best way to reach an audience, as long as you've got the right content behind that. And we're using social. We're using LinkedIn as our kind of primary social kind of media outlet. So it's almost forced us to, like I said earlier, move away from the physical events and conferences and do more on the digital side. And of course, there's more measurement now. So it suits us down to a T that we're able to do that.
Absolutely. Fraser?
Oh, look, tactically, it's been a massive hallelujah, quite frankly. I mean, for years, we've been trying to push our company in a very different way, and it's been a struggle to try and get them to see the value. And a fair point is we're trying to get people to take a leap of faith. But all of a sudden, we've obviously gone from physical events to virtual events because we had to. And amazingly, how easy our people, our partners, have embraced that. And to Julia's point, we've gone from an average attended event of about 60 to 70 to a webinar of 1,000 overnight. I mean, it's mind blowing, and the confidence building it gives, not just for our team, but for the business as a whole, when they see that and they see the reaction that it gets from people is quite incredible. And I have to say, our decision to invest in digital when we did, thank the Lord, quite frankly, ahead of this sort of crisis, because when your data's pushing out MQLs every day, and you're taking that to the business, it's justifying the value that we bring as a team. Well, when it's gold, you don't have to convince anyone. And I do worry for companies that haven't invested yet and that are trying to get that story over right now. That's going to be a difficult one. From a budget perspective, and very much aligned, Lee, nothing's changed at the moment. But we're very practical here in Oz. We don't know what's coming, quite frankly. We're hanging in there at the moment. We expect there'll be a sort of deep dive in revenue across Australia in the last quarter of this calendar year. That's the expectation. How quick the recovery means, well, there's different views on that, and that will dictate what happens to our budget. But I'm really confident, no matter what happens, that the value that our business has from our team, and the need to ensure that we're still communicating with our clients, we're still providing insights to prospects, and we're right behind the business to help them grow. I'm very hopeful and very confident that our own budgets will remain pretty much intact going forward.
No, absolutely. I think completely agree with the digitization and having the infrastructure in place. You can kind of see that already. And businesses that do have that or did have that infrastructure of being able to maintain. I think completely agree. I think on the virtual events, one of the things I'm interested in is, and Julia, if it's okay, I'll put the link in the show notes to your full day virtual event, because I know I've seen some images of that. And, you know, everyone listening to the podcast should go and take a look at that. I think it's phenomenal. I think the question I have, do we see that sticking? You know, is that going to stick? Because there's a lot of time and effort to get that up and running. And it would be great, I think, from a business perspective for us all, if it does. Or do we see maybe a hybrid model? Because I think some of the things events that I've seen being organized for 2021, let's keep the virtual because we can grow the numbers. But we'll also we'll also plan to have an element of it shift back to face to face. What do you predict the trend to be there?
I would say that the hybrid model is probably going to be the model going forward. You know, people are getting also tired out of just doing everything virtual, right? Similarly, like you've probably seen some articles of how, you know, just even video communications, right? People are tiring out of that. So I think there is that always need for personal connection. But definitely, you know, digitizing marketing and, you know, Fraser, I'm completely with you. I think, you know, now it's actually the time to show the value of digital, right? And digitizing everything, whether it's your events or whether it's, you know, just really investing more in other digital tactics is the way to go. You know, the way that we've seen too is that I think content and execution goes, of course, hand in hand together. And what we've seen is that a huge surge in content consumption. You know, with the proper content strategy, as we've put out a number of different blogs to support all of our events and topics that we're talking about. We see people are reading a lot more, going to our website a lot more. So digital really works. But I think in terms of the events going into 2021 or, you know, later in the year of 2021, we'll probably end up with a hybrid model.
Fraser, Richard?
I'd say hybrid for sure, and for all the reasons that Julia has just given. I would also add, you know, I think it'll be different by industry to an extent, but you know, we'll go back to physical face-to-face events, but I doubt we'll ever go back to large-scale events. I think we will absolutely go down to boardroom-style events where we are delivering insights, we're introducing prospects to clients that can share experiences, how they're dealing with risks and opportunities. I think clients now are looking for that kind of value and insight, and they're expecting it from on our point, our advisors. So I'm not so sure mass works for professional services firms and a lot of B2B firms going forward. I'm not sure, but I certainly think those smaller, tailored, bespoke content events are definitely going to be on the table. So, you know, breakfast, small lunches, something that they can do in their day without taking time away is probably the way forward for us for sure.
And I think, I think from our perspective, it'll definitely be hybrid. I think one of the challenges that we've seen with webinars and so forth, and those larger events, is it tends to still be broadcast. And as what kind of Fraser was saying, that's not necessarily what our clients are looking for. What they like about the physical events is that it's a more of a two-way interaction, even if that's just in the breakout sessions or during the coffee break. So we're actually trying in the autumn to actually do kind of more smaller virtual roundtable events where you've got, you know, kind of upwards of 10 or so clients, where, you know, we're looking to see how easy it is to kind of foster that kind of feeling offline. And I can see online. I can see if that works. We'll certainly do that, because we have a lot of our subject matter experts have to travel from the States or from the Far East to speak to our clients. So, you know, there's kind of a cost efficiency on that as well. And, you know, and I don't think it's going to be, you know, a couple of years until people are really traveling the way they did pre-COVID. I think that's one thing that's going to change. So connecting subject matter experts to your clients is something we just need to bear in mind.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I think also that hybrid model, that face-to-face being smaller, but also that face-to-face event can also be much more digital as well in terms of interactive. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity.
Lee, I think this is also where you've got to know your client. I think this is where the CX component comes real to the fore as well. I'll speak from our experience. Our typical client is a CFO, and they might feel that larger events go against the grain of their personalities, as it does for accountants in our business who don't naturally take to networking, for example. So larger events don't fit. So why do we keep doing them? Whereas technical, insight-led, this is just as changes in tax legislation. Well, actually, that's something that they would tune into if we did it in a webinar, that they could also tune into any time of the day to catch up. This is now where I think marketing teams have to, again, we're going to use this word, pivot, and be really, really clever about what is the message they're trying to get across and what's the best vertical to get it across, and put more thought into actually, should this be digital or should this be face-to-face? And if it is face-to-face, what does that look like? So, this is the opportunity to change everything, as far as I'm concerned. It's not the ideal position, but I also feel it's a position that was coming down the track anyway, in maybe 5 years' time, that all of a sudden has landed on our door 5 years earlier than we expected. And we're here, and now we have to adapt.
Yeah. No, I think we agree. It's all being accelerated.
Yeah.
Richard?
I think acceleration is the key word, and we touched on it earlier, in that people have been forced into this situation. So a lot of our similar kind of client base to Fraser in terms of CIOs who are they're not kind of natural extroverts perhaps, but now everyone's almost been forced into this virtual environment, and speaking on a video conference and meeting new people on video conferences. Now that seems the normal, and that's what we've got to probably kind of keep close and just make sure that we don't slip back into the old physical events, because the whole world is more used to this environment now, and having dogs wandering in, kids wandering in, and being a little bit more personal. So I think it's just making sure that we keep on challenging and keep on doing that.
Definitely, completely. No, look, I'm conscious of time, so I'm gonna kind of just wrap it up a little bit, but I'm going to throw you a curveball, and in terms of if there was one kind of recommendation you would give to marketing, I asked you three guys to come on this podcast and do this for a reason, because I believe your three individuals are at the top of the game in three different industries, in three different regions globally. So it's quite rare that we kind of, and we probably wouldn't have done this, right, if COVID was here. So it kind of plays back into that. But what's the one thing that one recommendation you would give to marketing, and your peers, and what's the one thing you hope sticks, So from a change that's happened because of this, and what's the one thing you hope sticks? And that could be from a personal perspective or from a business perspective. And who wants to go first? Because obviously that's the key question here. Shall I go first, right? And I'll give you mine, and that'll give you guys time to think, right? But I think the one, from a marketing perspective, the one kind of lesson, the one recommendation I would give would be, that to really make that where that we've come together as a team with sales, right? And you guys know me, I'm passionate about this, is that, marketing can't make an impact without sales, right? It cannot do it on its own. And, if if marketing can take that responsibility to kind of, let's say, put their arms around sales and say, come on, let's really now think about the customer. When we kind of get back to normal, let's stick to what we've been doing because it's going to work much better. And the one thing I hope sticks is what we kind of touched on before, which is from a personal perspective, where we can do this kind of thing and the doors can open and the kids can run in and the kind of dogs can, jump up and that sticks. Because I think from this is a human crisis. There's no doubt about it. We're talking about it from a business perspective, but I think there's lots of things that have changed. But I think that for me is a really good one.
I like that one, Lee. I would say, I mean, there are so many things that I think we all learned through this. But one thing that's important is agility for marketing. We were able to react fast. I think it's hard, but we had to reorganize how we operated, build tiger teams and just executing rapidly and thinking about how to make marketing really agile. And I think it's super critical, right? So agility would be my recommendation, finding ways to be agile and finding ways to focus. So when you have focus, you can be more agile. And then I think that greater connection between sales and marketing will come also naturally. And then what would stick, I hope that the empathy that marketing brings to the table, from the empathetic perspective, how we develop content or how we communicate, how we, respect what people want to see and how they want to consume content, and also internally, that empathy, I hope that stays.
Absolutely. Completely agree with that. 100%. Fraser, Richard, who wants to go next?
I'll go then. So I think it's I think there's some real consistent themes here, but really the working relationship with distribution, I think, or for sales, for us is key, and maintaining that. I think the way they need us now more than ever is something that we've got to capitalize on, and we've got to continually prove our value with metrics there, to make sure they understand kind of what we're doing, and just to solidify that relationship. And then in terms of the other part of the question, I think it's really accelerating digitalization. So not slipping back to where we are. There will be kind of a hybrid of physical and virtual, but really we know this is the right path, and we've known it's the right path for a number of years, like Fraser was saying, and Julia's been saying. But actually, this has given us an opportunity to accelerate things and to test and to learn and to bring elements of the sales organization along with us. So I think it's kind of keeping our foot to the floor on that digital acceleration would be the thing I really want to keep.
Absolutely.
So that was mine.
That's the benefit of going live.
I'll give you another. So like what I've loved about this period is just boldness. Not just from my own team, but from other companies that I'm seeing. They're just being bold. We're doing things differently. They're taking a chance. And I guess there's a wee bit of try and fail in that as well, and I love that. And I think for many marketing BD teams, we kind of lost that along the way. We've gone safe, and what a time to be bold and try something different. So I would just love to see that boldness continue and challenge the norm. The best things come out when people are given the opportunity to do that. So I'd love to see that continue. What would I not change? Like you, the human aspect has been just fantastic, I have to say. And I'm someone that travels a lot, as you know, Lee, and whether it's around Australia and occasionally globally around the region. The realization now that maybe I don't need to travel as much and I get to spend a lot more time with my family and my kids is something that, I just obviously took for granted, and now I don't, because I've spent that much time with them. So if I'm feeling like that, I can imagine many others are feeling like that as well. And finding that work-life balance through this period has been a real gem, quite frankly, and I don't want to lose that going forward. I think it's really important.
Yeah, completely. Look, I think one of the things I hoped from this podcast would be that we would get some consistent themes, because thinking about marketing, thinking about sales, but we got, again, 3 different industries, 3 different regions, all in the same, in the same peer group, but really, really, really common themes right the way through that. And I think that for me is the biggest takeaway, and what I hoped we would get, and I would agree with everything you guys have said. Look, I want to wrap it up by saying thanks. Obviously, I'm conscious of the different time zones, and Fraser's got to definitely get to bed. I know that, right? Being in Sydney. But one by one, if I'm gonna, there's gonna be really detailed show notes, right? It's gonna be packed full of your details, your job roles, LinkedIn, URLs, the companies you work for, some of the best work that I think you've done. Fraser's got an amazing preference center. We're getting a bit technical here, but and some of Richard's stuff and the same. So I'm going to pack the show notes full of that, because I think that's the resource that what I want from these podcasts is for it to be a resource. All right, so you can listen, you can watch, but then you can also take away a lot of information and go and use it. But for the audio and for the video, if people want to reach out to you, how's the best contact you? Julia, do you want to go first? What's the best route?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best route for sure. Okay. Just send me a request or a message.
Cool. Fraser?
Yeah, same LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I tend to lose Twitter from my football commentary. So Fraser McNaughton. So feel free to watch if you want to learn more about Glasgow Rangers. But LinkedIn is generally the easiest way to go.
Yeah. And for me, it would be a bit more old school, a bit more email is fine for me.
Okay. So look, we'll put it in there. But guys, really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time. We'll make sure the show notes get distributed as soon as possible. But I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Take care.
Thank you, Julia. Thanks, Fraser.
Bye.
Cheers, Richard.
Richard, Fraser, Lee. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Martha. Thanks, Bada. Cheers.